Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I am here to talk about a topic that you all requested, happiness in the digital age and the role of social media on our lives and the ever-changing, the tsunami of information that we live in these days. Now I'm going to start off with a story. So this is a story from West Africa. And the story is set up around a forest called Duka Duk Duk. Now, there was a smart young man who was a cowherd. So he had cattle. And in that part of the world, the cattle is a sign of your wealth. And he had this beautiful dairy cows. And he would try to find new pastures. And then this guy was a brave young man. And he chose to go into a forest which not many people were interested. Not many people had the guts to go in there. So this forest was called Duka Duk Duk. And there's a reason it's called Duka Duk Duk, is because it was so dense and it was so scary that when you went into the forest, you could hear your heart beat. Duka Duk Duk. Okay. So anyway, this young brave fellow takes his beautiful cows and through the forest. And as he's walking through the forest, he sees an open pasture, a clearing. And he sees this lush green grass, and now there's no competition. So he leaves his cows there to graze. And he comes back the next day, collects the cows, goes back, and he goes and tries to milk the cows. And what he notices as he's doing this over time is the milk that these cows are supposed to give, it's not quite as much. Then he kind of wonders what's going on. He says, I'm feeding them well. They look all happy. Now, why they're not giving me the kind of milk production that I expect? And so he goes in there and says, somebody may be stealing the milk from the cows, right? So he leaves them at night. So now this time he leaves them and then he hides among the trees and he watches. And as night falls, the moon rises. Sure enough, from a moonbeam, riding on it comes a beautiful maiden. And she comes with a bucket in her hand. She comes and she milks the cows, fills up her bucket, and rides the moonbeam back up into the sky and disappears. And he's startled. He's amazed at what he just saw. And then he waits the next day the same way. He hides amongst the trees and he notices that the maiden through the moonbeam comes down again with the bucket and fills the milk and goes right back. And he says, aha, so that is the thief. I need to teach her a lesson. So what he does is he puts a trap there. And now next time the maiden comes down, she gets caught in his trap. And she's stuck and she's kicking and screaming. She's crying. She's saying, release me. Somebody save me. Somebody let me go. And so this guy comes through the trees and he appears and he says, I will do anything for you. Please release me. And he looks at her. It's just so beautiful. He says, I'll release you under one condition. I need you to marry me. And she says, okay, I'll do that. And so he releases her and he says, okay, now, before I marry you, I need to go back to my home, to my land in the clouds. And I'll come back and then I will marry you. He says, okay. And he lets her go. And she goes back into the sky. And then to keep her promise, she comes down the next day. But this time when she comes down, she has a chest, a box with her. And she says, when she comes down from the sky on the moonbeam, she tells him, I'm going to marry you, but I have one condition. Forever, as long as we live together, I do not want you to be opening this chest. And he says, fine, no problem. And so they get married and they start living happily ever after. And then one day, you know how curiosity kills the cat? One day when the maiden is out in the market, curiosity gets the better of this cowherd. And then he goes to that chest and he opens it. And to his surprise, there's nothing in there. So he promptly closes it and he goes back to doing his business. And when the lady comes back, his wife comes back, she looks at him. The moment she sees his face, she can see it in his eyes, he has done something. She says, you have opened the box, haven't you? And he sheepishly, with that look in his eyes, he says, yes, I have, but there was nothing in there. At that point, tears start rolling down her eyes, coming down her face, and she says, then I can't live with you. He says, what do you mean? There was nothing in there for me to look at. So what is the big deal about an empty box and me peeking into it? She says, that's exactly why I cannot live with you, because you think that box is empty. But when I went back home, I filled in the box everything that meant everything to me. The sunshine, the fragrance, the warmth, the love of my parents' home. I put all of that in that box, and I brought it carefully, and I've been keeping it carefully. And if you look into it and tell me there's nothing in there, that means everything that I value, everything that means the world to me, feels like emptiness to you. How can I live with you when what meant the world to me feels like emptiness to you? And she rides the moonbeam and disappears forever. Folks, now why am I sharing this story to you? Ask yourself, what is most important in the world to you? And you see, we are living at a critical moment in the history of mankind, where the way we perceive life on Earth is changing. We think that our only influence is the society, human society, people, right? Social media, if you think about what social media is that it is our influence, it's our interest, it's our addiction to know what's happening within the human society. Now, what you don't realize in that process, or what we're beginning to forget in that process, that there are many other influences in our lives. There are the plants, the animals, the entire ecosystem. There are millions of species, of which we humans are only one of those species. And everything is deeply intertwined. We're all deeply connected, and our survival is dependent on theirs, and their survival is somewhat dependent on ours. And social media breaks away that connection with this entire ecosystem that we're a part of, that we depend on. I don't know if you realize this. If all the worms in the soil on this planet Earth were to disappear today, life on Earth will end in 18 months. Now, if all of the insects on this planet were to perish today, we talk about we get bothered by the bugs, right? We go outside and we want to put screens, we want to put lotions, we want to put all kinds of things to stay away from the bugs. Now, imagine those same bugs. If all of the bugs on this planet were to disappear today, life on Earth will end in 4 years. Now, if all of the microbes deep in the ground, which is now that's one of the most resistant to everything, but at the same time, it's one of the most important species on this planet. Now, if all of the microbes were to disappear today, life on Earth will end within an hour. Now, if you and I disappear, humanity disappears today, guess what? Life on Earth will flourish. So I say that it's very important to let ourselves make time to connect with our ecosystem, with our environment, with nature. And even more so, we need to encourage, we need to urge, we need to create conditions for our kids to find it interesting to be out in nature. When I say nature, I don't mean just going out in your garden, in your backyard. Out in nature where you're not under the confines and the controlled environment, where it's not protected park or some such. Really being out in nature and understanding how things work, how everything is affecting you, how everything is interdependent, how the planet works. Now, why is this important? I don't know if you realize this. We are the only generation that knows life on Earth before and after the internet. Pivotal point. We are the only people in history that know life with and without the internet. Such is the power, the point of no return of the influence of technology on human life on Earth as we know it. Now, there are a lot of pros and cons. There's a lot of impacts, and I'm sure many of those impacts you're already feeling, and that's why if you're attending this session, it's probably because you care, you're concerned, and saying this onslaught of this data, this technology stimulation, what is happening to me? What is happening to my loved ones, right? I want to give you just one data point to illustrate the effect of technology on human life. So in 2010, Steve Jobs had introduced the iPad. He always does this with a big splash media bonanza. And so a journalist came up to him and asked him the question. He says, so this is wonderful what you've done. Your kids must love the iPad, don't they? I'm sure they've used it. To which Steve Jobs said, they've never touched it. We limit how much technology we bring into our homes and how much we expose it to our kids. Folks, the creators of these technologies are well aware of the dangers that come with these innovations, with these widgets, with these gadgets that they're introducing that are now such a dominant factor in shaping our sense of reality, our sense of connection, our sense of communication, and how we spend our waking hours in a day. So take a cue from Steve Jobs and say, what are some boundaries that I need to set? And why is it that we need to set boundaries? It's because we as a human race are being challenged with one of the fundamental ingredients, fundamental aspects of human life, which is our attention. Our attention is the greatest resource. I read somewhere that attention is the new oil. Like back in the day, they could call it the black gold. So attention today is being vied for, those 5 minutes, those 10 minutes, those little breaks, those little times in between your activities, which were your time. There are attention engineers that are being employed by these multi-trillion-dollar organizations that are building algorithms that are vying for that little crevices of time that you have for yourself to be in between your doing. To case in point, so the largest oil company today, ExxonMobil, as of today, is valued at $150 billion. Amazon is valued at 10 times, $1.5 trillion as of today. Google is valued at $1 trillion. Facebook, the platform, the social media platform, $750 billion as of today. So what is this doing to us? How is this affecting life as we know it? How is this having social and psychological and personal impact on us? So number one, I want to talk about the myths that make you believe that you cannot live without social media. Right? So all of us feel like, oh, how can we be left behind? A lot of us get drawn into it because I don't know why, because I feel like, everybody else is doing it and I feel like I'm going to be left behind. I'm going to be no longer valid in this world, no longer useful, no longer relevant in this world. So I'm going to break it down and explain 3 different myths that make you believe social media is very important to you. Number 1, social media there's a myth that it is a fundamental technology. Now, I've been studying a lot about Professor Cal Newport's work, in which he explains that the social media apps on your phone are like slot machines. It's entertaining. We go to Las Vegas, we go to a casino to be able to play with the slot machines, to gamble, because it's entertaining, it's fun. There's no denial about it. Now, would you then pack up that slot machine, or if they sold one, bring it home and go ka-ching every day, all day? That's what social media apps are doing to you. The incessant throwing up of different pictures, images, sounds, the beeps, the tweets, the pop-ups, the pings. It's like being in a slot machine all the time. And if you put 2 and 2 together, you'll realize how it can make you hyper-wired, hyper attentive all the time on things that don't matter that much. Number 2, you feel like you're going to be no longer relevant in the job market if you don't use social media. Oh, I have to be in social media because I need to be up to date. I need to be seen as something that's relevant in this world. Folks, if you have skills that are rare and valuable, employers will find you. I repeat that. If you have skills that are rare and valuable, employers will find you. The third myth around our obsession for social media is around the feeling that it's benign. No, there's actual harm. There's actual psychological, emotional, and physiological harm that is being caused by social media. Now, let me break it down into 3 different categories. Number 1, attention fragmentation. We as a human race are losing our ability to focus. And you know what the dire consequence of that is? That distraction, that being constantly fragmented in your attention, is something that can have a permanent impact on your ability to be able to focus, or lack of focus. And when you cannot focus, you're no longer relevant in this economy. Number 2, social media has shown, scientifically proven, to cause depression and a sense of inadequacy. Why? We've all seen this. We have seen pictures of friends, or maybe even we've posted things where we have a very curated presentation of our life as if it is all rainbows and unicorns. And somebody who's sitting there and watching this stream of rainbows and unicorns flowing by in front of his or her eyes looks at it and says, look at my life, it sucks. Look at my life, I'm a loser, I'm incomplete, I'm inadequate. Right? So that leads to a sense of lack of self-respect. Number 3, anxiety disorders. If you go to college campuses and speak to any of the psychologists on there, they will tell you that anxiety disorders are a real thing, a growing issue, thanks to social media. So the advancing effects of technology, for all of the material promise, has done one thing. It's interestingly changed our priorities and has placed satisfaction of desire above the cultivation of being. Satisfaction of desire above the cultivation of being. And what that does is that the fact that humans need less and less conscious attention to perform their activities and lead their lives. So our attention span is becoming so fragmented that what is now the new normal of what it takes to be able to, the amount of time to be able to dedicate to focusing on a certain thing to get something done, is shrinking. If you think about it, about 15 years ago, the concept of TED, right? So TED said, they did a research and they said, people have the attention span of 18 minutes, so we will make our talks 18 minutes. Right? And then there came this phenomenon of, there were blogs that were very popular. And then there came an idea of microblogging, where Twitter said, no, people don't read these big things. It has to be 160 characters or less. And then now you have these things, Instagram and Snapchat, where it's not even words, it's just images that are constantly flying by, attention spans of less than 3 seconds. So how can we be relevant? How can we be able to do anything that requires a depth of perception, some attention that requires us to pour our hearts into it to be able to create anything, if our minds are being fragmented like this? That's one of the fundamental human capacities, is our capacity to pay attention to things. And now that's being challenged. So what I'm going to talk about now for the next few minutes is I'm going to talk about ways in which you can reclaim this, slow down this onslaught, slow down this attention fragmentation. And one of the things that will come out as the benefits when you devise your own methods, I want you to create your own systems, your own boundaries, your own set of, I call it the tech commandments. Find your own tech commandments, like the 10 commandments, create your own tech commandments for yourself that work for you. But when you go ahead and follow, when you're able to imbibe those commandments, apply them, and they start working, what you're doing is basically you're honoring your attention. You're giving value to your ability to focus. And what that does is when you focus, you're trading your intensity with which you're able to be productive for time. Think about it. So a particular task, when my mind is going back and forth, like a pendulum, being distracted by some peep, some ding, some pop-up. And if I'm not being distracted by that, I'm able to focus. And if I'm able to get my job done, I will use a fraction of the time to be done with it. And then I have time to be. I've earned back precious lifetime. And the second thing is that when you're able to apply these tech commandments, your rest and peace after your work, your whatever the job is, whatever it is that you do, your relaxation, your leisure time will be high quality. Because remember, it's the same brain you're taking with you, whether you're at work, whether you're playing with social media, or you're spending time with your family. Your ability to focus is coming from the same set of faculties. Your ability to sleep, guess what, is also coming from the shutting down of that noise inside your head. So if you're less distracted, you're less scattered, you have a higher quality of peace and rejuvenation when you're outside of that environment of work or the social media. So what can you do with that time? Imagine you've created these boundaries, you've taken yourself off of, you created this thing and said, this is the time I'm going to be with my social media, I'm going to be with technology for this amount of time. What can you do with that time earned? Invest in your life. You eat better, you exercise more, you sleep better, you connect with people, deep conversations, perhaps read more. And I tell you, there's one of the side effects of you being able to control your exposure and to be able to reclaim that time. Because your level of satisfaction goes up, your impulse to keep buying stuff to fill that void. You know how we're all walking around with a void because we have everything, but we don't feel complete. And so how do we try to fill that void, that's that gap that we're feeling is incomplete, with more stuff? And the more stuff is not really doing anything. It's not filling the void, because you know why? We are not a thing. Things do not fill us. We are not a thing. So as you begin to slow down, as you begin to create these clear boundaries and create space to be, you find yourself being more fulfilled naturally. And therefore, we are trashing the planet less with all our Amazon boxes, what have you, the packaging and the stuff that we use and throw in, the thing that, we want to keep upgrading stuff For why? I don't know why. Just because I want to feel like I want to be keeping up with the Joneses. So now I'm going to share with you my tech commandments. Okay, so you can take it or leave it, but this is what I've been doing. I've been practicing this for the last 18 years or so. Number one, the first hour when I wake up, no technology. The first hour when I wake up is my time, is because a lot of science around it. So one of the first things when I started embarking on this journey of meditation, I realized the power of the subconscious mind, who we are, all my decision making, my choices, my impulses, my gut instincts, my likes and dislikes is not really by the conscious mind, but it's really the unconscious mind. And when you are in that phase of waking up, your unconscious mind is still awake. As your conscious mind is waking up, that slowly begins to wind down. And it is my chance to program. It's my best opportunity to be able to affect who I am, what is driving me. So the first 1 hour is my time to meditate. Now you could use that in other ways. You could use that to go out in nature, go for a walk if the time is put, and if this your conditions where you live is safe enough, that's probably a good way of engaging with it. Perhaps splitting that time between some sort of a contemplative exercise and then reading something beautiful. So which is what I do, by the way. So not only do I meditate, but I also pick up something beautiful and positive to read first thing in the morning, because that's breakfast for the soul. And then comes the breakfast for the body. The second thing is that no technology while eating. I'll tell you, there's a little thing that a pivotal moment that actually made me adopt this thing. So 5 years ago, 2015, I signed up for a course called the Mindful Technology 21-Day Challenge. And in that course, they had 21 days where every day they would come up with this suggested practice and all kinds of things like being more compassionate with people, using technology to actually spread kindness and creating boundaries and this and that. But the one that stuck with me is this idea of not engaging with technology when you're eating, because eating is a precious time for human connection. Use that time to eat with people. And if you live by yourself, it's your time for yourself. It's that little window. It's a sacred space where you're nourishing both your body and your soul by eating in quietness, letting the thoughts collect themselves, gather, let the dust settle. So that's been a beautiful thing, that 3 times a day, no matter what's going on, during my meals, no technology. And the next thing I want to share with you, which has been a huge thing. So, I am not a Luddite. I do have technology. I do engage with it. I'm talking to you right now because of technology, and I probably messaged you through social media to tell you about this engagement that we're just now participating in. And so that's necessary for me. But the way that I try to create boundaries around it is I do not allow notifications to pop up and distract me at any time of day that they like. So for me, all notifications are off. And for me, my engagement with technology will happen at my time of choosing. It's not because something popped up that I'm focusing on trying to write something or create something or record something. And, there's that distraction, and it's bound to catch your attention. You start, even if you don't respond to it, your mind starts going in that direction. You're trying to be present. You're trying to do something here, but your mind starts thinking about, oh, I wonder who it is. I wonder if that person that I wrote to yesterday or that person I tweeted yesterday has responded back to me. And you could be completely wrong, but that's the waste of time. That's the distraction that does happen. So ask yourself, could you take off notifications and only create times when you choose to engage with your devices? The next thing is that I haven't had a TV in 20 years. Yeah. So in 2000, when I graduated from college, the last time when I was in my college apartment, that's the last time I had a television. After that, no television. Now, you might argue and say, hey, but you have a computer, and these days, your computers, your screen is really your window into the world. And that's true, but there's a fundamental difference, folks. And I want you to recognize that when you are browsing, when I am browsing, let's just speak, I'll talk for myself. When I'm browsing the internet, I am choosing a path to drill down. I'm choosing a ladder to climb or tree to climb, however you want to look at it. I am selecting versus the programmed information that is happening with me. I'm sitting there like a complete cabbage and allowing that to be soaked into my brain. The advertisements, the little catch things, the hooks that they put in there for your clickbait, as they call it. No, I don't allow myself to go down. I don't allow myself to be trapped in those things. So it's very conscious. It's very intentional, in which, of course, this is an incredible tool to think about it. The kind of information that we have at our fingertips, our ancestors could not imagine. They say that the whole Library of Congress does not have the kind of information that is being produced on video, just on YouTube alone, in a few months. The entire Library of Congress. Sit with that for a second. And then the fifth one that I have created boundaries around is I realized that news apps, reading the news, hasn't really served me. If anything, it just aggravates me. It makes me more sad. It makes me go revved up about something. It makes me kind of very distraught. So about 3 years ago, I removed all news apps. And if I need to hear something, there are ways. I have enough connection, I engage with people, and I will be informed when something is really important for me to know. Or I'll perhaps, maybe be a little late, but I will find out when I need to find out. And obviously, as you can see, I'm not some sort of a totally irrelevant person who doesn't know anything about what's happening out in the world, right? So there are ways that you can choose to get your information versus being just bombarded with stuff. So 3 things I'd like to summarize, and ways in which I recommend that you create boundaries around human technology interaction. 1 is tools for awareness, becoming aware, catching yourself, first of all, to see what is all of this technology stimulation doing to you. So number 1 is awareness, taking the time to slow down and stop and recognizing. And when I'm saying this to you, folks, I want you to keep people in your family, people that that look up to you, that you're responsible for keeping their lives also in mind, helping to influence them in their technology behavior, that hygiene, technology hygiene, if you will. So awareness. Number 2, creating boundaries, no technology zones, now both in terms of space and in terms of time. What are some times when you need to cut them off? What are some spaces that no way that they're not going to enter into certain places, the sacred places where it's a no tech zone? And the third thing is making these changes little by little. Okay. Oftentimes you'll see people like, they'll say, oh my God, I'm just so overwhelmed. I'm just going to cut off from my thing. I'm just going to get rid of my phone, what have you. Right? I'm going to go on this massive sabbatical. And then you deprive yourself of having been completely steeped in that indulgence. Guess what? When you come back after whatever it is, 30 minutes, 3 hours, 3 days, 30 days, what have you, you're going to swing right back. The pendulum is going to swing the exact opposite direction of the same intensity with which you left it. Instead, try to build that capacity for attention, for presence, little by little, one little step at a time. For example, I'll tell you, when I used to have these on-site retreats, and some of you may have attended it, you'll remember that I used to have this thing of checking in your phones or other devices like iPads, what have you. And there's often this resistance, especially first-timers, they'll say, oh my God, really? You wanted me to check in my device and be away from it from 3 days, whatever that the period of the retreat is? And then they do it, 3 days pass, and they even forget to collect it till I remind them as they're leaving the space, the retreat center, that, hey, do you remember you checked in the thing? And they'll be, actually, I'm happy without it, right? So little things at a time like that, little steps. And then you'll start seeing the benefits of it. What are you able to, noticing that, by the way, even the awareness of how you feel when you disengage, when you create these clear boundaries, is important for you to recognize, because that is going to be the impetus for you to further that change, to expand that space. And then before you know it, you'll realize that you have regained that control on your presence, on your attention, on your life, on being. Folks, now I would like for us to move into a somatic exercise and then a meditation. So I want you to take a nice deep breath, close your eyes if you want to. And I want you to give me a neck roll. Starting first of all by touching your neck down to your chest as best as you can. Go as far down and then try to gently rotate your chin as it is coming up to the side, as if to touch your right shoulder. Breathing in and out as this is happening. Don't hold your breath at all. And then now let the neck release, coming down to the chest again, and then trying to go up the other side to the left as best as possible, as if you're trying to make your chin reach your left shoulder. Now repeat this for a few more times. Let's do this a couple more times. Let's starting again by doing the pendulum swing over to the right shoulder. And then swinging to the left shoulder. Over to the right one last time. And to the left. Bring yourself to the center, holding your neck upright, keeping your back straight, arms rested, shoulders relaxed. And let us now dive into a meditation. Take in some deep, comfortable breaths. Breathing into your belly. A phenomenal ability of successful people is to consciously focus their attention. One who can self-consciously focus attention has the power to rewire their brain. Now focus your attention on an object of your choice. Pick any one, like watching your breath, watching the rise and fall of your abdomen, or focusing on the third eye, or the bottom of your spine, or reciting an internal mantra. Pick any one, but just choose one from these. This is the way to quieten the mind. When you give a treat to a monkey, the monkey goes up and down till it becomes tired. Then he finally rests. And in that rest, insight awakens. Inevitably, your mind will wander as you do this exercise. And each time it does, gently bring it back to the object of your attention. Like a butterfly that returns again and again to a flower. In the freshness of the present moment, the past is gone. The future is not yet born. And if one remains in pure awareness, disturbing thoughts arise and disappear without leaving a trace. Control of attention is your ultimate individual power. If you can do that, you are not a prisoner of constant external stimulus. You can choose from the patterns in the world and lengthen your time horizons. This individual power leads to many other powers like self-control and resisting impulses. And if you're forced to choose, we would rather that our children be poor with self-control than be rich without it. Notice if your mind is wandering. If it is, gently bring it back to the object of concentration. Like a butterfly that returns again and again to the flower. Now, in this tranquility and the clarity of a quiet mind, ask yourself this question. What do I value most in life? To end this meditation, I'd like to read you a beautiful poem by David White. Your great mistake is to act the drama as if you were alone, as if life were a progressive and cunning crime with no witness to the tiny hidden transgressions. To feel abandoned is to deny the intimacy of your surroundings. Surely even you at times have felt the grand array, the swelling present, and the chorus crowding out your solo voice. You must note the way the soap dish enables you, or the window latch grants you freedom. Alertness is the hidden discipline of familiarity. The stairs are your mentor of things to come. The doors have always been there to frighten you and invite you, and the tiny speaker in the phone is your dream ladder to divinity. Put down the weight of your aloneness and ease into the conversation. The kettle is singing even as it pours you a drink. The cooking pots have left their arrogant aloofness and seen the good in you at last. All the birds and creatures of the world are unutterably themselves. Everything is waiting for you. At your own pace, just whenever you feel ready, I'd like you to come back into this virtual circle that we're holding together. And I'd like for you to share in the chat window the answer to this question of what is it that is you value the most? Inner peace, calm mind. So folks, as I'm getting these comments, I also want you to please type in any questions that you might have into the Q&A section of this Zoom application. Inner peace, calm mind, love. Beautiful. The world that surfaced for me was peace, harmony, and love. Such a good session. Thank you so much. Such powerful facts that you shared. And I want you to take these facts and pass it along. I want you to share with your loved ones, share with your neighbors, share with your friends. Fulfilling my reason for being here. Fantastic. Okay, I've got a very long question here, so let's go through this one. Love the slot machine analogy and all you share. What if your job hinges on responding to notifications ASAP? With apps like Slack, employees expect you to always be on, even after working hours, if you work for a website, and respond ASAP despite trying to create boundaries. Additionally, what do you do if the frenzy of Slacks and emails take away from productivity, but you cannot impact this communication style if you're at the bottom of the corporate chain? Great question. Okay. Now, I want you to consider this question in any other toxic environment. And I use the word toxic. I know it's a little bit of a heavy word, but that's what it is doing, right? There's a certain amount of latent negativity that I am, a taste of bitterness that I'm being left with even after my engagement, whether in this case, work, both during hours and after hours. Right? So imagine that this question, you could turn it around and ask in terms of any other form of toxic environment. I ask that you make this choice, and you're the only one who can look at it objectively. It's hard, but you need to look at it objectively and say, is this worth me spending my time of life? Is this valuable for me to be trading? Because you remember, everything is a give and take, right? You're giving your time, your attention, and your life for the reward that you're hoping to get, whether it's experience, whether it's the remuneration, what have you. So you have to look at it carefully, and you have to decide whether that's something that you're willing to let go, or do I need to hold on to it for whatever reason? Okay, next question. Did you watch the film Social Dilemma? Okay, I have not watched it. And Linda is highly recommending it to all. Okay, so I shall put it on my list of movies to watch. Thank you. One of the questions I always get is, what is this thing, this background? And today I realized that my shirt is merging with the background, and it's like a floating head sometimes. And, you know, the rest of my body is appearing. It's like a genie. So sort of like your genie for today. Your show is the Genie Show. Yeah, so this thing is a picture I took in French Polynesia at the beginning of this year. And it is actually from my drone. I was in this island, and I was trying to fly over this tiny little island that's in the middle of nowhere, it's uninhabited. And then I got to this point where I turned the camera down and I pointed it just looking straight down, which, you know, I guess it's very hard if you're not a bird to get this perspective. And I took this picture, and it's like, oh my God, look at all those little ridges in the water that we would otherwise not see. And then somebody is probably riding a two-wheeler of some sort. You can see the tracks along the beach. So that's what it is. The floating head is magical. Well, I appreciate it, folks. Okay, so looks like we can end the session now. Thank you all for your time, your attention, your engagement, your beautiful positive energy to share this space with me. And I think I'm going to basically end this series here. And as you saw some of the comments that came up, so the recommendation is for me to do shorter segments. I've been doing this 1 hour for, God knows, for almost 6 months now. But I think it's time. People are saying that their attention spans, as we talked about earlier today, are, you know, they can focus on shorter things. So I'm going to try that. So the next series we will continue engagement. I'll have to poll you guys to see how to make it. How do I make something where the session is my actual speech, or my presentation is about 3 to 5 minutes at the most, and the rest of it would be meditation and engagement. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts on that are. And so we will take that offline. So please join the Facebook group or the WhatsApp group if you're not already part of it, because that's how we will do this communication. And until I meet you again, whatever that new engagement form is going to be, I want you to be happy. I need you to be kind, and I want you to be well. Thank you so much.